Hello, everybody. I think people are joining in right now, so I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to let a few more people log in. As always, this is a standard format, so down at the bottom of the screen is a little Q&A button. If you have any questions along the way, please enter them into that chat, that Q&A chat button. At the end, we will go through all of the questions and have any answers. Also, this is our third out of 5 speaker series sessions, so this will mark our halfway point through this speaker series. Our 4th session is tomorrow. It will be given by Harriet Gasson of Teledyne E2V. She'll be doing a bit of training and information on their modulators. Then our last speaker series will be next week. Look on the LinkedIn page for that, and we'll do a little recap at the end where you can register for any events that you haven't already signed off for. So we have a ton of attendees today. This is fabulous. Today's session is being given by DJ Conrad, who is CEO of RSEA, an independent service company for linear accelerators. DJ also serves on the board of the RSEA. So we're very happy to have him, and he'll be giving us a update on how the RSEA is working towards helping to develop that next generation of field service engineers. I am going to turn it over to DJ. I just need to make him the host. So DJ, coming soon. You now have control.
Been waiting for this. No. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Hope everybody's week is going well. I will say that there is going to be a guest speaker on our side, and so I'll do a quick introduction to Misty Bennett, who is our Learning and Development Administrator and is central to a lot of the work that in progress that has been made, frankly, since the RSEA annual meeting, the last time we actually talked about this discussion. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull up slides. Okay. Ariel, can you see my slides? You're my gauge here.
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, wrong up. So today we're talking about sort of developing the next generation of field service engineers and ultimately the role that we as a community actually play in that process, and frankly the opportunity that we have to actually be on the cutting edge of really changing the way that the industry ultimately is approaching the recruitment, onboarding, development, and frankly retention of team members within this profession. So one of the things, I mean, and this is sort of a big theme when we talk about sort of transforming the service community, is the service is exceptionally personal. This is something that you know, generally speaking, from a service provider's perspective or a service engineer's perspective, we are doing things at night, on weekends. It can be something that, in all honesty, is not well recognized. And so one of the things that we always want to be doing as a team here is recognizing each other and the strong efforts that the team has put in place to be able to do what we do and to work within a profession of purpose. With that personal side, I thought, why not make this personal? So, you know, just for me as a quick bio, so hometown is Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Have wife Jennifer. We have 2 kids, Hank and Sloan, and a dog, Coco. I would like to draw everybody's attention to the photo in the bottom right where Hank broke his arm last week. And if you notice, he has a cast on 2 arms. Well, they put the cast on the wrong arm initially. And so when we think about attention to detail and taking time to think through things, this is just another example within the healthcare environment that, in all honesty, sometimes even the most innocent oversights can have real impact. It also is going to be a fabulous Christmas card photo. Now, where are we today? So this is what's interesting about the Radon space is that there's a human capital constraint or a people constraint in virtually every single industry across the world, and especially when you get into more technical based professions, you're seeing more and more impact that whether it's COVID related or really it's the lack of a pipeline for professions that's creating a knowledge gap that you have senior team members that have been within the industry for a long time that are ultimately at the point of retirement, and you don't have the supply of team members coming into that profession or people coming into that profession to offset that. And so right now, I mean, in short, think about how it impacts us specifically within the field service side and directly within oncology is, at the end of the day, we have a very shallow talent pool. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to think not only how can we develop and retain the team members that we have within our community, we also need to be thinking about how are we bringing in that next generation? How do people know about our profession and how incredible of a career opportunity being a field service engineer within radiotherapy is? And those are the things that ultimately then drive you towards, okay, well, how do you not just attract talent, how do you effectively onboard and develop team members, which, the saying is it takes a village to raise a kid. And at the same point, that's essentially what we're trying to figure out is how can we as a community with the RSEA at the center of it be able to help in the promotion, recruitment, onboarding, and development of talent. Just some numbers to show essentially where we are within the US specifically is we are currently around 80% capacity when you think of what we would need based on a 1-to-6 or 1-to-7 engineer to machine ratio, how many field service technicians or engineers are currently in our market. And when you compare that to a lot of studies that Korn Ferry and other HR experts are out there presenting, we're looking at somewhere around a 20% deterioration of that talent pool over the next 5 to 7 years. And that's coming from two components. One is retirements. A great example is, and we'll talk about the CNSC, which is the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission here in a second, but in Canada, you have a nationalized health system and you have a predominantly in-house service model where you have about 225-ish engineers for about 450 Linacs installed. Well, the reality is that the studies within Canada have shown that almost half of those team members are slated to retire within the next 10 years. And so there's this sort of groundswell of support, concern, and opportunity that's happening to be able to backfill that. So this gap, even in the US, is tied to two things. It's the retirement piece, but it's also people leaving the profession. So if you don't understand where this profession can take you and what those opportunities exist in terms of a true career journey, you're gonna run into people exiting versus retaining them as part of your talent pool. The other thing is understanding the actual model, the operations model that we're implementing to where people can get burnt out. This is a very challenging space to be in. And so what are we doing as a community to help us effectively streamline processes, protocols, collaborate in a manner that creates a more productive and sustainable work environment? And when you think about sort of by the numbers, a good, and this is from both LinkedIn and Korn Ferry, specifically around employment statistics, by 2030, the U.S. market alone is going to see somewhere in the range of $1 trillion in annual employee turnover costs, which is, and now that's across all tech-based industries. The other piece for us is that we look at sort of average tenure. And one of the things that's interesting on varying side is that the average tenure for a varying service engineer is 4.2 years, which to me, that's not a career, that's not a profession. That is a very short stint or step in that approach. The other piece is part of a career track and a career journey is to truly understand what does that career progression model look like. And it starts with understanding the core values that, in all honesty, you just need to know to be part of that profession and to be a great service professional. And in the US, we have 0 certification programs around Linac engineers. And so what this really spells to us is this spells opportunity. So where do we ultimately go from here? Well, we as a community are working together, and the RSEA is the front face. And so whenever I may be a team member with RSA, but the reality on this is that this conversation is me as an individual member of the broader service community. And the community is rallying around, and this speaker series is a great example, rallying around how do we come together and create industry-leading people, parts, and platform solutions to help, frankly, enable and expand OEM alternative service models. And so that's part of the drive that we have. And what's interesting here is just from the president of Korn Ferry really calls out as part of that study that some of the stats were from on the previous slide, but the savviest organizations are taking the onus of training talent themselves. These firms are also trying to instill a culture of continuous learning and training. And the reality is that the new generation of talent, and we have to understand that times have changed, right? I don't want to sound old on my end, but at the end of the day, I'm a bit of a Prudential commercial where I'm turning into my father, and I'm trying to figure out how to work with multi-generational workforces is something that ultimately we need to be having active discussions about. And what we're seeing in younger generations especially is the absolute desire and expectation to have the organizations that they work for invest heavily in their development. And there's a good quote that my team here always hears me say when it comes to learning and development. So Richard Branson, CEO of Virgin, somebody once asked him, said, hey, what if we spend all of this money, the time, resources, investing in people to train them, and then they leave? And Mr. Branson's response was, well, what if we don't spend any money on them and they stay? And so that's where us as a community, we really need to let that sit and say, how can we collectively and collaboratively invest in our current and future team members? So something to understand on this as well is understanding the regulatory environment and ultimately how various markets on a global scale work when it comes to healthcare and adopting standards and practices. So when you think about North America specifically, we have here in the US, the FDA and the FTC, so the Fair Trade Commission and the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, are the primary bodies by which standards can be set. We've talked a lot on the advocacy side with the FDA between their definition of servicing versus remanufacturing. We've talked a lot about the FTC and some of the anti-competitive practice executive orders that are out there that are honing in on medical device repairs. We've talked a lot about right to repair. Nowhere in any of these discussions, though, does it speak to competencies directly of a service engineer. You have then, by comparison, in Canada, the CNSC, so the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, is tasked with, from a public safety perspective, is tasked with the responsibility of two classes of devices. The first, a class 1 device, is a nuclear reactor, and the second, class 2 device, includes radiation producing devices, which includes a medical linear accelerator. And as we said earlier, you've got a bit of a concern that's happening north of the border, where the CNSC has recognized, based on its constituents, has recognized a gap that needs filled urgently in terms of field service engineers to help maintain equipment in an effective and optimal level, so that those services from a patient treatment perspective are available to their population. And so what the CNSC has done is actually put out a standard that is currently under final review and should be issued sometime in the next month, or we'll say by year end, that really defines in a very clear and concise way guidance on what a competency framework looks like for an FSE. And the reason that that's important is that assuming, and all indications point to yes, assuming they adopt those standards, that really is a framework no different than an ISO 9001 or 13485 standard. It provides guidance for us in terms of what is a complete and comprehensive program to develop and train an FSE look like. And then it's incumbent on us to then figure out how to execute that. And one of the reasons that's so important is because when you think of the healthcare environment, effectively there's 4 core regions on a global scale that follow each other in terms of standards and expectations, whether they are formally adopted or whether they are formally recognized. And so if Canada is able to recognize a framework and approve a framework, then it largely will be adopted, and we can actually point to it in the US, in the EU, in Australia, because we all tend to sort of follow suit. So what that I walk away with that and say is, we actually now have a regulatory body that is going to approve or support a framework that we now have the ability to go implement, that says, hey, this is how you certify a service engineer. This is a massive development. This is not us as individuals or organizations or OEMs saying, here's the standard. No, this is a regulatory body giving us the guidance and the framework by which to then go implement it. So when we talk about the CNSC, and I've covered most of this already, but one of the things that I want to make sure that we're all aware of, especially around the advocacy piece, is that the way that no different than the FDA, the way that this draft guidance from a service technician competency standpoint, it ultimately went out through multiple public comment periods, that the last one ultimately ended on August 31st. And then conceptually, they have until or an estimated date of November 1st to release their final draft. Well, the RSEA as a community actually shared, as part of that open comment period, shared their own feedback. So credit to the community here and recognition to the RSEA team for actually having an opinion and getting involved. This is important. This is, when you think of advocacy and why do we rally around each other to represent our profession, this is a great example of where action has been taken. And you can literally, and I'll ask Ariel if it's available on the RSEA website, or if she can possibly send a link out to the open comments that were actually submitted. But it's plain as day. We've got our letter up there, and it's under consideration by the CNSC. So now let's talk about sort of action and what we have actually done. And this is where ultimately I'm going to bring in Misty to speak to some of the activities that we're working in collaboration with the community to put in place. And one of the key things to understand within the CNSC guidance, they ultimately break the framework into 4 key categories. One is around safety, and understand with the CNSC and with us, safety needs to be first and foremost. The second is around the regulatory environment. This is understanding effectively the regulatory space and requirements needed to be able to work on medical linear accelerators. The third is behavioral framework. So when you think about just being a professional within this space, how are we setting that standard as a foundation by which to build the 4th piece, which is the technical acumen? So when you think about that FSE competency framework, this is ultimately where it sits, and the service fundamentals piece is essentially the baseline by which the CNSC guidance enables us to start in that capacity and then work to build, as we climb that mountain, to build our technical competency over time. So I'm gonna slide, and I think you can see Misty. Misty, just give us just a quick couple-minute overview of what you guys have actually done on the service fundamentals piece.
So the service fundamentals, we started with collaboration with FSE, which is a local community college here. They have a very strong radiation therapy program. And so I know RSA and DJ has talked with them for several years about trying to incorporate just a foundation of what treatment looks like, to put that into a training for an engineer. So we actually, in August, we did a class with, I think we had 4 or 5 people in that, and it started at the community college, and we did a history of radiation. So we talked about from the very beginning, how it started, what they learned, how they did it inappropriately for a long time. The safety didn't come into play until several years later. So we started at the basis of what radiation is and how it starts. And then we take them through a departmental flow. So my background is I am a radiation therapist. I have been a therapist for 20 years. So I'm very familiar with the service engineer and the therapist working together, but there's a flow in a department that these engineers don't learn. So we go through the specific, each individual employee at the department, the doctor, the physicist, what their role is, the dosimetrist, what their role is, how to have a conversation with the therapist, the questions to ask, the questions not to ask, ways that they can troubleshoot over the telephone before they even get there. So we go through the whole department, take them through what a patient does when they come in, that they have a consult, that it's not a one-day process. And then it went into a radiobiology section, and we hit surface level of what happens to the body, what happens to the cell from the radiation. And it really gives them a perspective on why it's important that a patient not miss a treatment. So if a machine's down, the patient doesn't get treated, that actually affects the outcome of, it can affect the outcome of a treatment based on cell survival and biologic effects. So FSE has a program called VIRT, which is a virtual simulator, and it allows them to actually see a virtual patient and a virtual tumor, and how the beam actually affects the area. And so if the table is off, or if the gantry is off, it shows that treatment is going to be off. So we had a great outcome. I had a lot of good comments about it's just a part of it that they don't see. And even though it probably doesn't affect their ability to fix the machine, I think it brings in the reality of it, and that is a patient on the table, and that is, that's somebody's mom, or that's somebody's daughter, and the effects of a machine being down, or the machine not being calibrated correctly, does affect a person. So that was our service fundamental. That was our goal, and I think it turned out great, and we're going to keep working with it. And we hit all of those 4 categories. We talked about the safety and the regulations and the behavioral and the technical part of it. So we're bringing it all together at a very surface level.
Gotcha. And that's where it is. So like when Misty's talking about VIRT, by the way, if you guys remember during the speaker series, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was in 2020 or 2021. The speaker series, we did have Vert do a live demo, and it's really it's a unique way of being able to understand that care environment. But these are that entire course was developed in collaboration with our community, and we've got partners out there that we're really working with as we sit here and we say, okay, so here's this guidance framework. Now, ultimately, how do we implement it? And it's not just RSA doing this. Really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it out to the community so that it has a far greater reach than any one entity can be able to support. Because essentially what you have to think about is the delivery of this comes in three sort of categories. One is around the theoretical side of the science and the protocols when you think of safety, behavioral, regulatory, and technical. The second is the practical piece. So that's the hands-on, that's the more technical side. That's where, how do we create a program that is accessible from a practical basis or a facilitated learning basis. And then the third is around verification. So how do we then verify that said engineer has met all of the criteria and expectations and has passed the appropriate tests or certifications to ultimately receive whatever that certificate of program is, which is something that actually does not exist today. Our understanding of variance program is that you get a certificate of participation as an example. But we're not talking about participating in a course. We're talking about learning from a course and being able to show those competencies, which is ultimately what the regulatory bodies want to be able to see. And frankly, what we want to be able to deliver as we attract, onboard, and develop that next generation. Now, when we look at this, just sort of rounding this all the way back is, this is a huge opportunity for our community to come together. We have partners in Canada. We have partners in the CNSC. We have partners across the US in terms of the major in-house groups that we're collaborating with. We have partners in Brazil that are working through similar programs that we can start to align around a standard approach and share information, share experiences, and figure out how we can get a real program out to the largest number of potential team members possible. And essentially, one of the things that we're really trying to consider within the RSEA is clearly defining what that career journey ultimately looks like. And by being able to show that career journey and progression of a field service engineer, we strongly believe that then that allows us to go out and start to promote and recruit around that profession, whether that's going to trade schools, whether that's going to mechatronics programs, whether that's going, frankly, to high schools and starting to talk about how great of a profession this is. Those are the commitments, and that is a critical role that the RSEA plays. So in closing, I see there may be one question. I want to sort of open it up to the team here. Ariel, how do I see the questions?
Down at the bottom, there's a Q&A button.
Okay, so Corey from Sutter Health said the participation certificates are only for customers. The internal engineers get a qual certificate. Okay, that's a good clarification.
I was going to say, if anybody has any questions or comments, definitely now's the time to type them in. Again, it's a little Q&A button down at the bottom, and that's where you can enter anything chat-wise. I will say a little bit of color around this as well. I do know that there are, like as DJ mentioned, there's multiple people working towards this endeavor. We know that there are some in-house teams in Canada. in Australia, in the UK. So it's an incredible effort. And, again, the goal is to have one unifying structure, and the RSEA is definitely the central spoke in that endeavor. DJ, do you see this next?
No, can you read it out to me?
Sure. So Corey also had another clarification. Electa is different in that regard because they had customers and employees together. So Corey, you're saying that when Electa gave their technical training, they included customers and their own engineers. So it was like a group training for the community.
Yeah. I think one clarification on this is that what we haven't heard from the OEMs specifically is that the training is more technically focused and the training is not professionally focused. Because the approach on this really is that philosophy of we need to, as part of recruitment in building that next generation, you need to get people that are going to be great professionals that truly understand the importance and impact that being a service engineer provides within a care environment. Understanding what are those behaviors and attributes, especially around communication, around on the behavioral side, even professional presence, the way that we ask questions, the way that we take notes, the way that we act with urgency, the way that we lead. Those are all of those intangibles that frankly the CNSC has done a really, really good job at trying to capture for us to then ultimately integrate into a program. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to create those cultural fits and strong professionals within the space, and then we can build the technical acumen on top of that.
DJ Dan Stinson has a question. Will the initial foundation training be an available product for in-house groups?
100%. So the way that we're approaching this, in all honesty, is with one of our core criteria is around accessibility, and that's the reason that we're trying to balance, number one, ultimately who are the people that are facilitating each course, so that it's not reliant on a single entity or a single point of contact, and secondarily, being able to do it in a way that doesn't require every training component to be an in-person learning. So when you think of accessibility also speaks to online learning, even in a facilitated capacity. It speaks to self-learning opportunities. It speaks to practical or on-the-job training opportunities where people come to you in some capacity. So the idea here is to really expand accessibility and make this, frankly, as convenient and achievable as possible to all consumers. Dan, my goal is that one day we get a call from the OEMs, and it's going to start, I'll be honest with you, it'll start with groups like Reflexion and some of the new OEMs that are trying to not poach engineers from Varian because that's their primary form of recruitment at this point, and wanting to collaborate with us as part of their recruitment and retention processes.
I just want to say Jim Beatty also backed up. Varian is an outlier in this. Most major OEMs have customer students in the same class with their own FSEs. Barry Small also mentions in the UK, we have a similar scheme, which is moderated by IPEM. The issue most UK sites have is low pay for in-house engineers, which causes movement to OEMs who offer larger salaries.
Yeah, and that is a risk in this, and we've heard of, and I want to say it's the University of Birmingham. I can't remember off the top of my head. We have worked with one group out of the UK that collaborated with VERT as part of a 3-year apprenticeship program. And that was one of the pieces of feedback that they said as well, was that the OEMs essentially are using it as an opportunity to source their next generation of engineers. So it means it's working, just the retention piece isn't.
Any other comments from the group? Oh, I think we do. Corey, RSEA needs to take the lead on the training and development of the next wave of engineers. Online training criteria would be a huge key.
And Corey, are you going to actually put a question in, or are you just going to be all statements today?
We love Corey, by the way, he's the best. Stephen Gibson, the government leaders in Ontario do not have value healthcare workers. Do not value healthcare workers and have limited any pay increases to 1% for the next 3 years. Wow.
I will say that we have seen, and this is just a comment, we have seen more interest from Canadian nationals to immigrate to the US for field service positions. Prior to, in all honesty, I think it was probably the middle of last year, we had not had experience with that, but we've seen a handful of resumes come across, which in all honesty, what we're trying to do is not go that route, because what it does is, and this is one of those challenges that we all face here, just being totally candid, is if we are essentially taking engineers from an existing non-OEM service alternative, all we're doing is hurting ourselves in terms of the viability from a competitive perspective, because it opens up the opportunity for the OEM, or it opens up the opportunity for the ISO or in-house group to struggle in service or be challenged in service. So we definitely should be coming together on that versus competing.
Jim Beatty also mentions a big challenge with developing the pipeline of in-house is getting the C-suite to approve the cost of training positions, which is, I think a fair statement there.
100%. And so some things that are interesting creative ways to get around that are through apprenticeship models, Jim. So one of the things that we're looking at is Dan actually, Stinson at Barnes Jewish brought us in with a group called Hiring Our Heroes, and trying to really scope out a 12-week or 10 to 12-week apprenticeship model within and that's a state-run program. That doesn't cost you as an employer anything, is a great way to be able to recruit and evaluate talent, as well as give back to the veteran community. And we're also, as part of this, a longer term sort of objective is to connect with somebody like an Amy. I don't know if it is Amy, to develop some form of an internship or apprenticeship program in a more formal capacity, to where you have an independent body that ultimately we can all participate in. And you're seeing this trend on the facility management side when you think of groups like Crothel and Trimedics going that route in terms of in-house buy-in.
DJ Corey has a question.
Yes.
What does RSEA currently have developed as far as training opportunities, or are they developed yet?
Right now we have the service fundamentals course available, if you will. And one of the things we wanted to get through was a conversation like this. And as part of our year-end discussion at the board level is where that will be the first time that we're going to talk about how to ultimately get it out to the community. And we're continuing to invest in that, because we're working with groups like Linac up in Canada, Marco's group, who spoke at the annual meeting, and looking at creative ways again to be able to generate access to programs in short order. And Corey, a great thing on our side is, and we've all got sort of a commitment at the RSEA level, is we've got to start somewhere. And so that's ultimately what we're driving towards. But yes, it does exist. The service fundamentals course absolutely exists right now. Ariel, you still with us?
Sorry, was on mute. So Corey asked, where is this service fundamentals course, and how will it be, administered?
Right now, it's administered in person. It's a week-long course, and we are looking at ways to effectively try to turn it into a 5 or 6 modules, and minimize the time requirement per module, and B, the travel requirement. But the course exists, which is nice. So everything is developed, everything is designed, and now it's just a matter of how do we get it out to a larger population.
Right. And Corey also asked, is it on the RSEA website? So not yet. Again, it's not been determined how to roll it out, but that will be coming soon. And we will definitely keep the community updated through, our LinkedIn page, the website, the monthly newsletters, blog posts on the website. So, obviously stay connected and check in on that, because this is one of our largest, our big 3 strategic initiatives for 2022, and we've made incredible headway with it. Anything else? All right.
The team, I will say, this is, when we say it takes a village, this is absolutely, from a community perspective, one of the most impactful things that we can do as individual and corporate members within RSEA. So any level of engagement, if you guys ever want to talk about this stuff in more detail, please contact Ariel, contact myself, contact any of the board members, and we will absolutely want to remain engaged. This is an exciting time, and this is our opportunity, frankly, to really leave our fingerprints on an industry.
Just making sure. Oh, one more comment came in. Thanks, Stephen. Stephen says, great talk. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. And I'm just going to give my little spiel here at the end. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. If I can figure out how. All right. I'm going to quit Apple Music. I don't know why that came up. Got a lot of old jazz on here, guys.
Yeah, who's Pink Martini?
Oh, they're great. I recommend them to everyone. So just as a reminder, we have a RSEA LinkedIn page now. It's public, if it will come up. Please connect with us on that. We are able to, post information in real time, have community discussions. There's obviously a lot of interest and activity around our Guest Apart Fridays. The page looks like this. We've got 183 followers right now. Announcements of upcoming events will always be here. In addition, we've got a YouTube page where we are posting these videos. So look out on the LinkedIn page and the website for posts of those videos being uploaded. This video should be uploaded by Friday. As a reminder, in regards to the right to repair, there is a new tab at the top of the RSEA website called Advocacy. This is where you can go and click to log any right to repair events. And remember, the rule of thumb here is no incident too small, and please log it every time it happens. The importance of being consistent as a community in logging right to repair events is that we start to create a story for the FDA of limited access and anti-competitive moves within our industry. Obviously become a member, and then just know, if you just go to the homepage of the RSEA, again, we have 2 more speaker series sessions. Here is where you can connect to those. The first one is tomorrow, and then the last one is next week on Tuesday. We will be doing training around modulator theory and IC profilers. So the last 2 sessions in the speaker series will be formal training for engineers. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email us, post a question on the RSEA LinkedIn page. Really appreciate today's participation. It was great. And thank you, DJ, for all of your help, and Misty as well. So thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you hopefully tomorrow for
Thank you.
modular training.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye, everybody.